Hello, everyone. I'm Mujahid Bilici. I'm academic director at Zahra Institute and professor of sociology at John Jay College, City University of New York. Welcome to Zahra Institute's Spring 2025 Speaker Series. Its first talk. We have a great lineup of speakers. I think we'll have opportunity to see the flyer for that. Okay, here it comes. And today we are honored to have Professor Ahmet Kuru. Ahmet Kuru is a great friend of mine. We have a history together during our graduate school. He is currently the director of Center for Islamic and Arabic Studies, and he's past Bruce Porteous Professor of Political Science at San Diego State University. He was a postdoctoral scholar at Columbia University. Kuru is the author of Secularism and State Policies Toward Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey, a book that came out in 2009, which received Society for Scientific Study of Religion, SSR's Book Award. He is also the co-editor with Alfred Steppen of Democracy, Islam, and Secularism in Turkey. This was 2012. It came out of Columbia University Press. Kuru's articles appeared in various journals, including World Politics, Comparative Politics, and Political Science Quarterly. His most recent book, Islam, Authoritarianism, and Underdevelopment, a Global and Historical Comparison, came out of Cambridge University Press in 2019, and widely acclaimed work. It co-won the American Political Science Association's International History and Politics Section Award, received honorable mention of SSR's award, and was included in Times Literary Supplement's Books of the Year. Ahmet Kuru's works have been translated into Arabic, Bosnian, Chinese, French, Indonesian, Malay, Persian, and Turkish. And if I'm not wrong, only it was yesterday that he returned from a trip to India. So Ahmet has numerous engagements, speaking engagements, and his work is being translated into multiple languages and receiving wide attention globally. So we are very pleased to have a speaker of global significance here with us in terms of his contributions. And today's talk is going to be on populism, Islam, and nationalism, a global partnership worldwide. I believe this is probably a project that is going to become a book, and I'm looking forward to hear. Ahmet Kuru is going to speak about 35 minutes or so, and then we will have a Q&A. Welcome, and the floor is yours, Ahmet. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bilici. Mujahid and I, as he said, have a long-term friendship, and I truly appreciate his intellectual contributions as a truly organic intellectual, not just an academic, but also having contribution to public debates. And I analyze your Zahra Institute flyer very closely, and a wonderful group of people on very important subjects. And I am honored to be giving this presentation as part of your semester speaking series. So we have limited time. Let me start with the concept of populism. As you rightly mentioned, Mujahid, this is my new book project. And when we are looking to world politics today, we see the combination of very important concepts such as populism, religion, and nationalism. This is very intriguing because globally, they are coming into power. From here, the United States to Europe, Middle East, India, Russia, almost everywhere, there's a new trend. Either we like it or we try to criticize it. We have to understand this trend. So I have a PowerPoint prepared for today's discussion. Therefore, let me share with the audience. As you see, I call populism, Islamism, nationalism a new partnership worldwide. And when we look at the world today, using Freedom House data, in the last 5 years, maybe in a longer period of time, there is a crisis of democracy. 2021, Freedom House report had the cover title, Democracy Under Siege. A year later, the global expansion of authoritarian rule. An important dimension of this crisis is right-wing populism. Either they are in power or in opposition. They are either undermining democracies or consolidating autocratic regimes. And when we look at the meaning and main characteristics of right-wing populism, we see that they have certain discourse and policies. It is an anti-elitist discourse with the claim of defending the rights of and being for the people. Of course, these are all contested terms we will discuss. They also present themselves as anti-liberal, sometimes anti-progressive, anti-woke, and some versions of right-wing populism, not all, defend the traditional values. And there is very strong xenophobic element. You may call it anti-immigrant, in some cases anti-minority. And both in government and opposition, they are very effective to disseminate these discourses. And religion and nationalism in many countries are two pillars of this populist right-wing trend. And that makes them popular because of several global factors, such as decline of the secularist left, particularly since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and even China to a large extent give up communism, and the secular decline of the leftist ideologies helped this right-wing populism. And anti-liberal discourses in and against the West is an important ideological dimension of this anti-elitist movement, which also gained momentum with social media in various dimensions of it. And we see how the demagogue leaders brought together nationalist and religious forces. This is interesting because when we look at historically, at least in the history of Christianity and Islam, we know from the great scholar of Bernard Lewis, sorry, how did I say Bernard Lewis? Benedict Anderson, in his Imagined Communities, and in some other major writings on nationalism. Nationalism in the case of European history and history of Muslim Middle East emerged in reaction or with certain competition with religious movements. I try to summarize in this table how in the Christian world, religious transnationalism claimed to follow the Pope, whereas nationalists have local nationalist leadership, the community Christian ecclesia versus nation, and the language, of course, Latin versus vernaculars. And in the Muslim world, similarly, the Caliph, the Ummah, the Arabic versus the national leader, national identity, and vernacular language. And Islamists and nationalists in particular have had struggles in Turkey, in Egypt, in several other countries, wherever you have the debate between Islamists and secular nationalist projects. For Islamists, Sharia law, especially family law, in some cases criminal law, should be based on Sharia, whereas nationalists are for secular law. Education either should be on the madrasa base or modern schools. And the foreign policy based on Islamic brotherhood or more nationalist identity formation and interests. And despite this history of the tension between religion and nationalism in Christian and Muslim societies in the 19th and early 20th century, in the late 20th and especially 21st century, we see an amalgamation. And look, for example, now we have in Turkey, there is an official coalition between Tayyip Erdogan's party and Devlet Bahçeli's Nationalist Action Party. In Saudi Arabia, there is a reform in the last 10 years, and whomever I talked to, they told me that MBS is more nationalist than being Islamist. And despite the historical rivalry between secular socialist Nasser's Egypt versus Wahhabi Islamist Saudi Arabia, today they are good friends because Saudis moved from Islamism to nationalism. Egypt moved from secular socialism to more Islamic constitution and public discourse. Now, ideologically, they also have a rapprochement. And this is not simply about Muslim Middle East. Everywhere in the world, we see how religious and nationalist forces coming together with certain shared views about their statism, patriarchy, certain discrimination against minorities, and mixture of religious and secular elements in law, education, foreign policy, and shared discourses in non-Western countries as an anti-Western nationalist discourse, and in Western countries, certain anti-liberal discourses. And let me conclude by looking some major cases around the world, because this is, as I said, a global trend. Global populism took advantage of global decline of secular left from the United States to Israel, from India to Russia. Anti-liberalism and anti-elitism helped, let me repeat once again, the triple alliance of demagogue populist leaders, nationalism, and religious conservatism. And the 6 cases I'm trying to very briefly discuss today: United States, France, Turkey, Israel, Russia, India. And these 6 show us a great variation. United States is still a Protestant majority country, France Catholic majority, Turkey Muslim majority, Israel Jewish majority, Russia Orthodox Christian, and India Hindu majority. And geographically, North America, West Europe, Europe and Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Southern Asia. And democracy scores, you see, United States, France, still strong, but there are deep worries about the future of democracy in these 2 countries. Turkey, Israel, Russia, India have lower scores of democracy. So in the United States, Trump's made a comeback, and now he has the full force of imposing an agenda even more aggressive than his first term. America first, conservative Supreme Court is ready to support him. And the Muslim ban was the first term. Now he is proposing the elimination of Palestinians from Gaza. So, and multiple aggressive foreign policy agendas, even targeting Canada, the old friend of United States. This is foreign policy. And domestic policy, of course, they have clearly conservative agenda, which mobilize nationalist and religious forces. In the case of France, Macron, if you look at the father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, sorry, Macron tried to stop Marine Le Pen, but Marine Le Pen was more successful than his father. And his father received the second highest vote in 2002. In the second round, only received 18%. But in 2017, Marine Le Pen received 33%, then 41%. And in the recent parliamentary elections, right-wing populists got the highest votes out of all the competing parties. And Macron tried to challenge them, having a discourse about Islam, about immigration, saying Islam is in crisis, but still right-wing populists are in rising French politics. In Turkey, as I mentioned, President Erdogan, in his first 10 years from 2002 to 12, has more liberal agenda with embracing Kurds, European Union. In the last 10 years, much more nationalistic agenda, and we'll see how it's going to transform with the new discussions about a new opening about Kurdish rights in Turkey. And in Israel, Netanyahu, he has been personally under trial. He allied with religious far right, and his policies is not anti-American but anti-Arab, and strongly supported by religious and nationalist politicians. In Russia, interestingly, despite all the former communist, former atheist, ideological legacy, institutional legacy, we see how Putin, as an individual believer of Christianity, wherever he visits Jerusalem, Greece, always try to do pilgrimage. And regardless of whether he is believing or not, he is politically pursuing a pro-Christian agenda. I was in France last summer, walking down from the Eiffel Tower to bank of Seine River, and I saw a newly established cathedral. And I was surprised, who built this cathedral? They told me that Putin. So Putin even Christianized Paris, building a huge cathedral near to Eiffel Tower. And his recent Ukraine war was also showing us how Greek Orthodox Patriarch, Russian Orthodox Patriarch, support Putin's agenda, saying that whomever fights in Ukraine will be rewarded spiritually. So Russian nationalism and Orthodox Church now has a new alliance, anti-Western, anti-liberal, patriarchal, supporting invasion of Ukraine and Putin's policies with a religious enthusiasm. So last but not least, India Prime Minister Modi has a Hindu perspective combining ethnic and religious nationalism. They, to a certain extent, demonize Mughal history. And they also had the anti-Muslim citizenship law, which says that people coming from neighboring countries will be accepted to India unless they are Muslim. And the defense, of course, they have different defense mechanisms saying that non-Muslims are persecuted. But if you are a persecuted Muslim from Myanmar, for example, you have a hard time to be accepted to India. So the 6 cases show us how sustainable these regimes, because in France, they are not powering yet, but in the US, Turkey, Israel, Russia, India, these leaders have long-lasting rule. And then they are different. Some of them anti-gay, some of them are not anti-gay, some of them anti-immigrant, some of the others not anti-immigrant, but targeting minorities at home. Some, like Russia, are more irredentist, trying to occupy a neighboring country. And this process is very worrisome for all of us who want a more democratic world, who are either minority, like myself living in America, but I am regarding myself as a citizen who has equal rights and duties, regardless of what my religious identity is. And the possibility for all of us to have a better world in the future is truly the concept of democracy and equal citizenship. But unfortunately, right-wing populists are challenging this vision. That's what I'm analyzing. Thanks for listening. I'll be happy to engage with, of course, Professor Biligi, my friend Mujahid, but also with the audience. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Ahmet. That was very interesting. You showed the landscape, a lot of dimensions that were out of sight to me personally. Now I can have a better grasp of what you have in front of you. But we didn't hear your explanation for it. Are you saving it for the book, or are you gonna tell us? You are waiting for the questions. Maybe to provoke you, I will pose a question, and then let's see what other folks are curious about. My question would be, to what extent do you think this is a reaction to globalization? Some sort of vernacularization is happening, if, you know, a kind of retreat from globalization, which leads to a merger of religion and nationalism, and, you know, secular and kind of conservative discourses merging and so on. So that's my kind of speculative guess as a possible answer. I'm curious what you have to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you giving me the opportunity to really explain my punchline. As you said, on purpose, I didn't say very rigid things. First of all, the book is information. You know, there was a caricature, a scientist in a laboratory. He said, I don't know what I am doing here. It is perfectly neutral scientific research. But of course, I have some ideas. And one thing is that this, when you look at 6 cases, it shows us both similarities and differences. They are similar in a way, but also sharp distinctions. As I said, some are anti-immigrant, some are anti-gays, some others, and they are changing. They are establishing rapprochement, a new negotiation with minorities. These are very pragmatic leaders. Trump is an example. It's very difficult to put him in a box. He can surprise you. We thought he was an isolationist, but now he has an aggressive foreign policy, like an imperialist. Which way he is going to predict is very difficult. But at the same time, of course, I have some causal explanations about them. At this point, it is still eclectic. Maybe eventually I'll have a grand unified theory. But the eclectic things start with, as you say, globalization. Benjamin Barber, he passed away. He was a great scholar. We lost him. And he wrote a famous book 25 years ago, Jihad and Mock World. So of course, the term jihad is a bit simplistic because local resistance or nationalism emerged in the Jewish form, Christian form. It's not simply Muslim. Mock word is global capitalism. But even that now, in the case of America, look, the populists, almost the second leader of them is Elon Musk. And then he also represents global corporations, right? So are we seeing him as a local resistance of American nationalism, or the global imperialism of capitalism that is really collecting data about you and me and all of us, wherever we use social media, computers, phones, etc. That's one thing, local versus global. Another thing is clearly very strong anti-intellectualism. So this is stable. So again, the corporate CEOs standing behind Trump during his inauguration are elite. They are billionaires. But the discourse they defend now is anti-elitist, because you and I, intellectuals, we are kind of threat with our critical thinking. They want to see all of us as customers, objects. And I remember when we were grad students reading Karl Polanyi and commercialization. So we are supposed to be commodity, either buying or being bought by them. And this anti-intellectualism has multiple sources. It is not simply a discourse, an ideology, but also technology help it. Because social media now makes information accessible, which is a wonderful thing. Being at Columbia University Library, Harvard, no longer give you a prestige because everyone has an access. But at the same time, it makes hard work, dedication, expertise, and knowledge less significant, especially for some young users of social media. There are influencers, YouTubers, which makes a professor, an intellectual, less significant. And this is also an important dimension of technology, social media, how populism gain ground. And another dimension, I think, is how religion became a political identity in most cases. So when we were young, secularism in Turkey, secular Labor Party in Israel, secular politics in America, and definitely in Europe were dominant. And immigration in Europe and immigration to America to a large extent made Christian identities much more politicized. And in Turkey, Israel, and elsewhere, religious groups came to power. And then that makes them defend majoritarian views. And democracy became much more majoritarian. The concept of liberal values, liberal principles, liberalism, almost became an anathema. And if you ask me to really summarize, I would say that it is a reaction, a reaction to globalism with local nationalist religious resistance, a reaction to elite intellectuals, doctors, professors, and others coming from mass society, young people, social media users. And it is a reaction to liberalism. And we can see it as circular because religious groups and nationalists came as a reaction to secular trend. And then liberalism at the time of Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, Turgut Özal, they became dominant. They defeated communist Soviet Union to a large extent. And now it is time, everyone attacking liberalism, not only religious and nationalist forces, but also leftists. They attack liberal, even at the point that saying I am a liberal became a dangerous thing. Multiple sources attack you. But if we put liberalism aside, saying that, oh, liberalism is linked to capitalism, inequality, there are homeless people in America, worldwide poverty, liberalism is the source of problem because it is inherently tied to capitalist inequality, then what is the alternative? That's my question. Do we have an alternative ideology or proposal for the future to put on the table against right-wing populists? So we have double challenges. One challenge is to understand populism, how it is anti-global, anti-liberal, pro-religious, pro-nationalist, using social media technologies, and they have very influential, pragmatic leaders. On the other challenge is how liberalism can fix its own problems to put a distance with wild capitalism, domesticate capitalism, have a more social justice element in it, and produce some leaders, because in the United States, Turkey, Israel, there are no alternative leaders at this point. So this is my summary of the argument at this point.
Thank you. That was great. For the audience, feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak. Until I see a hand, we can proceed with the question posted here. There's a question from Ibrahim Sheikhani. Let's take this one, and then Esma's hand is up. Ibrahim Sheikhani's question, Salam from Kurdistan. Thanks for amazing presentation and topic. Question is, in recent years, we have seen the rise of populist movements, Islamist ideologies, nationalist sentiments in various parts of the world. Some argue that these forces are increasingly intersecting, forming a new kind of political partnership or alliance. Well, Ahmet is among the people saying that. Do you think this convergence is a temporary phenomenon driven by a shared opposition to globalization and liberal democracy, or could it evolve into a more enduring and structured global movement? What are the potential implications for international relations, human rights, and democratic governance if this partnership gains momentum?
Thank you. This is an excellent question and two-part questions. First of all, the implications are very worrisome. We may see more wars, local conflicts. It is a bad news for Palestinians, for minorities all around the world, for Kurds and other ethnic groups. There is a worrisome trend because populist leaders, these are strong leaders with some military appetite, and they know how using military can increase their popularity. Therefore, we are very much concerned, we should be. And you know, Mujahid, there is the theory of democratic peace theory, saying democracies would not wage war each other. But what about increasing tension between United States, Canada? If populists push an economic war, and eventually there will be more tensions in foreign policy. That's the worrisome thing. Regarding the aspect of the future, the question, there are two things. One thing is what pro-democratic, pro-liberal people can do. I basically mentioned. At this point, I'm not very optimistic. Another dimension is the inherent contradictions of this alliance. This is what I am optimistic about more. It reminds me of Marx saying that the capitalism has inherent contradictions, therefore it will face multiple crises. So the inherent contradictions of this alliance is that, first of all, nationalists and Islamists in the Muslim world and elsewhere have contradict their agendas, because although pragmatically they are now coming together against the common enemy of woke liberals, minorities, etc., they do not have a theoretical answer to the question, for example, should we pursue Sharia law or more religious law or secular law? In Turkey, for example, are nationalists always happy to see the expansion of madrasa, tariqa, Jama'a, or they want more secular Atatürk type Turkey? Is it really so easy to eliminate any tensions they kept discussing about a century? Or in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, even in the United States, are all Republicans now in the civil servants happy that Elon Musk intervening to their institutional freedom, their institutional precedents? So eventually, there will be the resurfacing of the tensions between religions and religious and nationalist forces. And the populist leaders' pragmatism is also a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they are avoiding big philosophical questions with daily pragmatism, but these philosophical questions will eventually haunt them. As I said, Donald Trump foreign policy, is it isolationist or imperialist? You can't defend both for 4 years. So this alliance seems to be a short-term partnership. That's why we have to keep analyzing them and try to offer long-term solutions to the problems our countries have.
Thank you, Ahmet. Esma, we can have your question.
Selam, Professor Ahmet. And this question is maybe the same with the other, maybe. Do you agree that the laws of American global hegemony leads this populist movement? Actually, this is the word system analysis. Liberal international system is kept by the American system or state. As a word system, it is ordered, normed, established as a trade system. And with the Trump withdrawal from its role, American states withdraw from its this role. Do you think this is an effective problem? This is, as I said, a word system analysis. Thanks.
Thank you. That is a very important question in terms of structure. In social science, we keep analyzing the role of agency and structure. So we have some important leaders here, and there are others I didn't mention, like Orban in Hungary. In fact, for some, Orban is really mastermind. He's coming to United States, promoting an agenda. As a EU member, he defends right-wing populism in a strong way. There were others. One was in Philippines. He retired, no longer in power. And here and there, some leaders. But these leaders, their agency, are connected to structural factors. And some structural factors we mentioned already in my brief discussion with Mücahit Bilici, the technology, globalization, and one thing you mentioned is the world system. So United States claimed to be the patron of the New World Order in 1990s during the Father Bush era by defeating Saddam Hussein's army occupying Kuwait. United States said there is no longer Soviet supreme power and I am the only superpower. And then United States worldwide hegemony or being the only superpower position was diminished. And today, we no longer have the legitimacy. In power, you have three sources. Coercion, and on that, United States still has the largest army, the most powerful military force of human history. Second is money. On that, United States no longer control 40% of world economy as it was controlling after Second World War, but still it is the primary economic power on earth. The third is legitimacy. United States no longer has legitimacy. Legitimacy basically the belief that the others see you having the right to rule. And United States no longer has an ideational position that other countries look at and say, oh, Americans are our leader. They have the leadership law. Well, first of all, Trump administration clearly denies such a role. They don't care about having a leadership law. And it started earlier with the Obama's mistaken policies during the Arab Spring. Then came Trump the first time, then Biden's Gaza policy, then now Trump. So America is losing its authority. And when I was in Malaysia, I had problem with Islamists. They're reacting me. Then I called American embassy and they told me that since Gaza, we have no credibility in Malaysia. So you see, it is accepted by American diplomats that our mistaken policy make us less reliable and less legitimate. And then this is the policy dimension. If we look at economic dimension of your question, how American capitalism established a world system, clearly American companies are dominating now. Google, Facebook, Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, they have a dominating power. And presenting this domination could have been based on democracy, competition, equality, and saying that, look, we have a dominant economic position because there is property right, freedom of speech, we provide you good services, there is a competition and we win, and we will share, establishing philanthropy, etc. But instead of this, covering capitalism with more democratic discourse, now American corporations support the leadership of Trump, who for some reason has an aggressive imperialist agenda, or at least discourse. This is a very mistaken thing, because if corporations no longer defend democracy, human rights, humanity, why would Indians, Chinese, Japan, and others accept American domination that much? They would, for example, they could simply deny the property rights of Microsoft and other American companies' software. They can produce plagiarizing software, copying them. And then eventually, not only tariffs, but also this anti-democratic discourse may negatively impact the financial interests of American corporations. And they should see this long-term damage. But of course, both politically and economically, American hegemony is a large extent responsible for the crisis we are in now.
Thank you very much, Ahmet. Any other questions? Please raise your hand, or you can type if you would like to put it in comment section. I think there is one. Ahmet, can you read the question?
Yes, let me read in the chat. US-American imperialist discourse always existed. Trump is only honestly speaking about it. This is an interesting question and asked by Shoharish Aidir. You are right, but at the same time, he is also worse than others on several issues. For example, he is asking Palestinians to be removed from Gaza. That didn't happen before. He's diminishing good relations with Canada and European Union. It is also uniquely problematic thing. And when I look at my main expertise, religion, I see also very worrisome trends. So I started this book project as an extension of my earlier book on Muslim societies. So very briefly, in the previous book, when I look at 50 Muslim majority countries today, I see the problem of authoritarianism and underdevelopment. It's a contradiction of the Muslims' golden age of science and economy between 11th and 12th centuries. An argument is that between 8th and 12th centuries, Muslim ulama, religious authorities, had certain separation with political authorities. But after 12th centuries, this diminished, and the religion, politics, economy, and academia became somehow dominated by what I call ulama state alliance. And today we have the problem. So I start the project looking how Trump's connection with evangelicals is kind of a clergy state alliance. Modi's connection with Hindu authorities, Putin's connection with Orthodox authorities, Netanyahu's connection with Jewish authorities are similarly a religion, politics, unification, and clergy state alliance. And any connection is problematic because we need capitalism and state to be separated from each other, not only religion and state, but also corporations and the state. Therefore, when we see corporations control politics with campaign finance and otherwise, this is diminishing democracy. And when I presented this 2 years ago in Germany, some German scholars said, okay, your case makes sense in Turkey, but not the others because they are all secular. I say, okay, but look, in Turkey, there is some religious conservatism. But don't you think in Israel there is religious conservatism? Of course, it's not secular. They are very, very religious, ethnic religious, Judaism or Jewish policy agenda. Or when India, of course, there is Hindu ethnic religious dimension. And even in Russia, despite its communist history, some people have what I call belonging without believing. So they say in Europe, in Russia, in America, even if they don't believe in hereafter, resurrection, heaven and hell, even God, they say as an identity, I am Christian. As an identity, I am Jew. And this identity should have a political implication. That's how religion, even in Europe now, even in France, one of the most secularized society, religious identities are now an important pillar. And the economic agenda of Donald Trump and others, yes, he is honestly saying certain things previous leaders were not saying, but he is also bringing very strong religious conservatism. So now in the Supreme Court, religious conservatism almost have 6 versus 3 supermajority. So in the abortion debate, they reverse Roe versus Wade. They may do more things about the school prayer, about the public money going to confessional schools and others. So we are seeing a religious conservatism at home beyond the capitalist world system and other things in American politics happening now.
Thank you very much. We have a question in the comments, and then Hussein has raised his hand. We can hear Hussein's question as well. Would you consider the convergence or conflict of populism, Islamism, and nationalism to be a reflection of national trends towards religious or cultural syncretism in democratic societies?
So yes, definitely, there is some eclectic element here, because when we look at religion, basically it's about metaphysics. That's how we differentiate Marxist and other ideologies with religion, because they refer to a metaphysical beings and then the belief in the life after death or some non-material objects. Whereas now, what we are seeing is that religious discourse combining in the populist trend is eclectic in a way that not only people use religion as a set of principles, but also in terms of a way of excluding others. So in the case of United States, for example, when I after Trump elected, I mentioned my article, Religion, Politics, Nationalism, just published, and it's very relevant. Some people in social media says, no, religion is not something important in American politics. And I said, look, according to exit surveys, the polls taken after Americans leaving ballot box in the presidential election, there are two major gaps. So Trump won in every element except colored female voters. Even the Black and Hispanic men vote more for Trump than Kamala Harris. But the main gap is about religion. 85% of unaffiliated people in America vote for Kamala Harris. Only 15% of unaffiliated people in America, which means those who have no religion, vote for Trump. Versus 75% of Protestants, evangelical Protestants, regardless of their Hispanic, Black, or white, 75% vote for Trump, only 25% Kamala Harris. So every country, therefore, even if they are secular societies, religion now played a major role in shaping people's perception of populism. So there is a longer question coming.
So I think we'll have Hussein Kurt. He raised his hand. Hussein,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kuru, for your analysis of the global trend of populism in the world. I wonder whether the liberal comeback or liberal resilience is dependent upon extreme failures on the part of these populist governments in Western Europe or North America. Do you think that is the only way that other politicians can regain the trust of the common folk? Or what can prompt a counter populist movement as grassroots movements coming from the society against as a reaction to the failures of these populist leaders? Do you think there's a chance like that?
Thank you. Yeah, this is a great question about the future prospects. Interestingly, when I started this project 2-3 years ago, I was planning to say the rise and fall of populism. So I was very optimistic about the fall already started. Why? Because it was right after Trump lost vis-a-vis Biden, and I never thought that he would have a chance to be winning again. Then in Brazil, Bolsonaro, I forgot the full name of the populist leader, lost the election in Brazil. And in both countries, the supporters of populists had a very failed and embarrassing attack to Congress. January 6th event in America, similar event in Brazil. I said, look, in two major North-South American countries, they are in decline. And in Europe too, at the time, in France and some other countries, they had no chance to come in power. I said, okay, probably their period is coming to an end. But I was wrong, because in America changed. Brazil, we don't know. In Europe, they became the primary party in France. They are already in power in Italy, Poland, Hungary, and they are now coming in power in Austria, Germany. So in UK, they have very strong support, even street protests against the immigrants. Some attacks happen in UK. In these regards, they seem to be very vibrant. Populists are very strong now. In terms of the future, as I said, we should wait and see their internal contradictions, and the liberal alternative should fix their own problems and to produce some leaders with a broader appeal to the society. So, politics is always a coalition. So the alternative parties need to establish a coalition, of course, bringing some minority elements, but also from the majority, those who are unhappy with this declining democracy, the citizenship principles and other things. That's the strategy for the future.
So we can talk about some sort of resilience for the future.
Definitely. Politics is always power and resistance.
Thank you. That was a great question, Hussein. And I owe you an email. I just remembered that. So I'll be in touch. I think Hashir raised his hand, Mohammed Hashir. Mohammed, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prof. Actually, I have a very simple question, and I don't know if my question was addressed before I entered, but then I'm very curious about the politics of Saudi Arabia under the leadership of bin Salman. Populism, we can talk about that. Nationalism, we can talk about that, the way he was gaining support from the grassroots and people, hailing him, saying so many good things about him because of the kind of the politics he's just doing in the country. And his break away with the Arab League and trying to foster some kind of alliance without, you know, Middle East and everything. But I just get curious about the issue of Islamism in his tenure, whether he's just drifting away from the Wahhabi ideology and how he's going to, you know, position the politics of the country in or within the Arab, you know, countries and outside. I'm just curious about that. If the prof can say something about that, I'll be very happy.
Good. Thank you, Mohammed. Mohammed is a student in our Critical Muslim Studies program. So, great question. Ahmet?
Thank you. So, in fact, this is a very complex question because Saudi Arabia is a crucial country. By having Mecca, Medina during the Hajj, they are able to disseminate particular religious teaching to Muslims worldwide. The second thing, of course, 20% of world oil reserves. Using petrodollars, they have been spreading Salafi Wahhabism globally. Now, MBS in the last 5 to 10 years have a reform agenda. Of course, the Khashoggi murder made his image globally very much weakened. But he is pursuing the agenda despite the opposition of certain Wahhabi clergy, ulama. And he put several of them in prison. So this is a top-down authoritarian project. It's inspired by the influence of the neighbor UAE, and more importantly, by the fact that oil money will be gone. You know the joke, Stone Age and before the end of the stones, and oil age will end before the complete end of oil because of new technologies we are having. And Russian attack to Ukraine make Europeans much more searching for green energy alternative rather than buying gas from Russia. So this technological change combined with the physical depletion of oil reserves make Saudis look for alternative future. And they look at UAE saying that we can have a better airlines, tourism, construction, diversification of economy. I watched some long interviews of MBS when he repeatedly said that with strict Sharia law, I cannot bring tourists to this country. Therefore, pragmatically, he is looking for non-Wahhabi alternative. And he is challenging what I call ulama state alliance, because the original idea is that since the time of the marriage between the daughter and son of Saudi clan and Abdul Wahhab's daughter, there is the partnership. This is the narrative of Saudi origin, Arabia. But MBS now is promoting that, no, we the Saudis establish Wahhabis are not the inherent partner of the state building. And he is trying to put them aside. So my wife and I, we performed Hajj this summer. We were in Mecca, Medina. So we were able to see some transformation. For example, in the Friday khutbah in Medina, in Rawza Mutahhara, the Prophet's place, they did not recite the hadith, كل بدعة ضلالة وكل بدعة في النار. كل بدعة ضلالة وكل بدعة في النار. So all the innovations are deviation, and all the deviations are in the hellfire. So they are responsible for making my old mosque wherever I go in California to recite every Friday this, but they stop reciting at least in one Friday khutbah sermon in Medina. Because when I went to Dubai, I saw they had the Future Museum where they put innovation is the essence of life. So it is bidah is the center of future.
That's quite a revolution.
Yeah. So, but the problem here is that whenever Muslims from the late Ottoman to Turkish to Saudi Arabian reformists and Egyptian, they always do it pragmatic, practical, without touching the theory. So Saudis are not inviting me to have a debate about ulama, state allowance, Sharia. They are inviting Jennifer Lopez.
You must be jealous, Ahmet.
Yes, I am jealous of J-Lo. So and what we have to open certain issues about the meaning of law, the epistemology, how observation and rationality become jurisprudential elements in addition to Quran, Hadith, Ijma, Qiyas, how Muslims can observe the world and produce reasonable logic reasons to have law making. So this is what I think Saudi Arabia important, but they have to touch the theory.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. It's we have a lot of great folks, colleagues in the audience. Professor Hasan Kaplan has a question. Go ahead, Hasan.
Okay, hello everyone. It was a great seminar. Thank you very much. I have a question tied to the Hussein's question. That I'm curious. What do you think, Professor Ahmet, this partnership will last? How long do you think this partnership will last, or is it sustainable regarding the Turkey especially? What do you think the future of this partnership?
Thank you. This is a very important question, looking over 10 to 20 years of long project, because in the short run, they are in power in many countries. One thing is contradictory in their agenda is the popular supporters' expectations. So in the US, for example, some people with economic deprivation voted for Trump. Is he going to deliver that? But his tariff policy will make things more expensive in America, can even trigger inflation. So therefore, the imperialist foreign policy, by pushing tariffs in the economy war, will make his supporters less happy. In some countries, these populist projects create inflation, economic problems, but their supporters decline, but some of them remain loyal with a religious discourse. But in countries like America, is religion opium of the masses, or the discourse will help them to be loyal or not? Another thing I didn't want to say, but maybe I should briefly mention the age of the leaders. I didn't want to say because I am not against old people. I am also getting older. But all of them almost are older than 70. And naturally, you can't be leader at the age of 90, 85. Biden tried. Biden tried hard. It didn't work. We have to be realistic. And since all of these leaders are older than 70, unless they have a strong alternative successor, this is another reason for the future of the crisis of populism, the aging leaders staying in power.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I was curious about especially this, also like charismatic leaders, especially in Turkey. Erdogan has a very well-known charisma. But he's aging, of course. So we don't know really what's going to happen after him.
Yeah, from after Atatürk, İnönü came, and then he left. And sometimes low-profile leader can be very charismatic. For example, Nasser and Sedat. So Sedat had no charisma when he came to power, but in terms of foreign policy, economic policy, he appeared to be a revolutionary. It's very difficult to predict these things.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's about time to wrap up. Unless there is a burning question, I would like to invite you all to visit our YouTube channel, where this talk will be posted alongside earlier ones and the future ones. In 2 weeks, we have another lecture by Cihan Mohammed from Vanderbilt University. Now you can see the flyer for the talk. I would like to thank Professor Ahmet Kuru for this very interesting, thought-provoking, very relevant conversation. Thank you, and we are very happy to see you with us here. Thank you very much. And everyone, enjoy the rest of the day, rest of the evening, wherever you are. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye then.
Thanks.